There you go. Hey Pat,
What's up, Ty? How you doing, man? It's good to see you.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. It's Friday, so I'm
There you go.
not going into work just yet, which is nice for
Nice.
football Friday nights. So I get to do nothing for a little bit. So let me just do one thing real quick so I can grab
Yeah, you're
some.
good. Take your time.
All right. Okay, I'm all good. So yeah.
Cool. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves first? I know obviously Pat knows me, but if you guys just want to introduce yourselves, that'd be cool too.
My name's Emma.
My name's Quinn.
I'm Soumya.
Yeah, like I said in the text, Pat, we're just gonna ask a couple questions. We have a sport media project, and we're kind of just getting like industry insight through this interview. I figured you'd be like a great person to talk to since you're fresh out of UD. Um, but first thing, right off the bat, can you just tell us like a little bit about yourself, kind of what you do, or just stuff going on in your life right now?
Yeah. So like I said, it's nice to meet you guys. My name is Patrick Laporte. I go by Pat mostly. And like Ty might have mentioned already, I'm a sports editor for the Cecil Whig out in Cecil County, Maryland, which is about 15, 20 minutes from Newark. I went to UD for 4 years, graduated last spring. And I did all the student media at Delaware, the review, STN, WVUD. And yeah, so I kind of just learned my way through, kind of just navigating through that sort of stuff. Intern a couple places, and right now I'm living at home, going to work 5, 6 days a week. I'm covering high school sports, so it's pretty good, I can say. Nonetheless, it's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of work at times, but it's a lot of fun. So
Yeah, like touching on sort of how it's kind of been like throughout this fall and stuff like that. What's like the day to day kind of been like, especially for the fall?
yes, with the fall, so with my job, like I know there's some you'll see some newspapers and such cover mainly football. And I do cover football every Friday. That said, the way our audience kind of wants they like seeing other sports covered, so they like seeing the local soccer game, the local field hockey game, local, if I have time, go to a cross country meet. And right now we're in the midst of like the state playoffs for the state of Maryland, so I'm getting out to I was at two soccer games last week. I was at a field hockey game on third Wednesday for their regional championships to go to the state tournament. Today I'm actually going to a boys soccer game and then going to football. So right now it's been hectic, and I do a lot of game coverage, but I try and mix in other story aspects as well to try and tell stories, do feature articles on athletes, coaches, both present, past. So it's very much right now like 5, 6 days a week. I'll travel a lot. That's one thing that's going to be coming up in the coming weeks. Like I was in College Park about a week or two ago for a golf tournament, state golf tournament, because a kid from Cecil County won it, repeated as a champion. So it's a lot of travel from what I've learned right now, even just in general, like during the early parts of the seasons, it's still a lot of traveling just to the local high schools in the county. But it's fun. And I would say that, it's a pretty day to day, you got to be on your stuff, being that you're on a deadline, whether that's for the paper or just trying to get it out in a timely manner, the story out. So people can obviously read it and you can generate an audience and keep that audience, engaged with what you write and what you produce. So
Awesome. I was gonna ask too, like obviously I know a little bit of your involvements, but how do you think like being at UD and being involved in so much kind of like shaped your career path, or like did you find certain things that you're like, oh, I don't want to do this, or I really do want to do this, like over the years?
yeah, I think my involvement, like I said, it started with the review. I started as a sophomore in college, just writing, and then obviously the pandemic hit, so everything went online, and I kind of just took it on as like a hobby to begin with. And I bought a camera and a basic lens, and just kind of walked around, took pictures during the pandemic when like couldn't go anywhere. And but eventually I started getting better at it. I took a class over the summer through the university going into my junior year, just like a basic photography class, and learned the basics of it. And I really applied that into everything I did from that point on with the review, WVUD, STN. At how Ty knows me with Club Track. I was a social media manager last year, so I'd take photos at the meets that I'd be at. So there was that. That became a big thing. Like, it just took on a hobby that I knew would help me out, and in turn, it became something I really liked to do. And I think the other thing as well was just, especially in the sports side of things in sports media, like, you can take classes on broadcasting or sports writing, which I did take a broadcasting class for sports in particular. But I mean, the only way you really I learned, at least, that I learned what I do now, and I still use stuff that I learned in college now, was through going to games, being at games, working with the sports information directors of the university and working with media PR people, because they can give you a lot of insight, and obviously they do control the information that goes in and out, and they give you access to their events and their games and such. So I think those clubs, especially with VUD and the review, really helped me understand how to navigate that now, when instead of dealing with SIDs they don't have high school SIDs, but I'm dealing with athletic directors. I'm reaching out to coaches, obviously, to talk to players and to talk to them. So I think getting that experience through that experience of working with others in sports media and just in athletic departments in general really helped me just get where I am today, and understand, the basics of how this stuff needs to be done, and how you can, get answers, get interviews, and be able to really grow, like I said, grow your audience and grow people to read your stuff or listen to your stuff or whatever that might be.
So like my question is, like, if you're going around to all these like different sporting events and like different high schools and stuff, like what was like your favorite article or favorite event that you went to and like wrote about or talked about, if you have one?
So far, I could tell you about when I was in college and right now. I'll start with like right now in my job. I would say, there's been a couple recently. Honestly, it wasn't even so much an event. Like, I think there was a football game a couple weeks ago that was a really good game. I traveled out into the neighboring county. It was like during the week that Hurricane Ian came through, so it was a little wet and gross, but I got some great photos and it was a great game. But I think actually the one thing that I recently actually just wrote last night, or finished writing yesterday, was a long time football coach at one of the high schools I cover. He wasn't coaching, but he passed away last week. And throughout the week, I was talking to a good close friend of his that was an assistant coach that was like his closest friend for like 25-30 minutes. I talked to his daughters, and then I had all these we had put out online just to, like, if anyone had stories wanted to tell, like, to just call me. And I talked to probably 6, 7, 8 people, varying years, varying ages, when they had him, when he was their football coach. And it was just really cool to hear this man's story that I had never, got the pleasure of meeting. But being able to really being able to tell that story or relive those memories and kind of encapsulate it all into about like 1,000 words, like, I thought was really cool. And I think that covering events is cool, and I will get into that, what my favorite part in college was. But like, I've learned that writing feature stories and really diving into the story of like where someone comes from or why they got into golf or football or whatever, I think that's really cool. But I answering the question about the event part, last spring, Delaware made the men's and women's NCAA tournaments. We covered the men's and women's CAA tournaments, their conference stuff. So I was a photographer for the men's tournament, which was awesome. I got to call the women's conference tournament, which they won, which was awesome. And then I went to the University of Maryland to call the women's basketball game against Maryland. And we had a crew go up to Pittsburgh to cover the Delaware-Villanova game as well. And they were within an hour and a half of each other. And it was just a really cool experience. It was very hectic and very stressful, especially when we had to transition from basically one broadcast to the next. But looking back on it, that was probably the coolest thing I've ever done in my really young career. And until I do that again, hopefully, it might be the coolest thing I will ever do in my career to get that moment. And, they might have lost by a combined total of 60 points to two teams, but like in that moment, it was just awesome. And it felt like it didn't feel like I was a student. It felt like I was a member of the media. And I guess you could argue I was, and we are when you're in student media and student journalism. But I just thought it was amazing, and it's something that I will carry for the rest of my life. So
That's awesome. That's just like a really cool connection. And like with those photos you were taking, like how hard is it to like take a picture of the athletes like while they're moving and like playing? Like, do you find it like hard to do that? Or I guess basketball might be a little bit easier, but
that's the thing. Like it just developed for me over time. Like when I started, like it wasn't easy. Like I had to learn, the basic set or how to manually expose a camera. There's three major things. There's ISO, aperture, and f-stop. And once you kind of master those, how to be able to get a picture that is like clear and like obviously in focus, but like it's not like too dark or maybe too blurry or too blown out, too highlighted, too white, I guess you could say. Once I learned that, it was then kind of just figuring out how to follow the action. And like I said, it didn't come to me overnight. Like I could look back on my stuff I did in my junior year, and now it's like I've come so far. And there's other factors to it too. I mean, part of it's the equipment. Like photography is not cheap. Being a photographer, it's not cheap at all. Especially when you work in low light situations at night, which I will be doing tonight with football, even basketball games, like you're shooting at these things called ISOs. If any of you guys haven't like learned any about photography, it's basically, it's the camera's way of automatically boosting the exposure and making the image look brighter and like more clear and not dark. But with that, it adds this sort of grain. It's called noise, and it makes an image basically look more grainy. So the more ISO you have, in turn, the more grain you will have. So it's trying to balance that. And there's other factors as well. And that comes with obviously what equipment you have. And there's all these other factors. But I think at the end of the day, like for me, it developed over time, and I was always out doing it. Like that was something that I really enjoyed doing. And whether I was at a Delaware women's basketball game, whether I took photos for a high school in Philly for a little bit last winter, just during the break in the semester, just because I was bored, got a little money for it. And it was just getting out there. And that's what I learned with that, and really just with all, like, you got to just get out there and do it. Like I said earlier, you can obviously take classes, and that's very helpful. And the professors can be great helps, but at the end of the day, you still have to get out there and do it to get better at it each and every day. And I still think there's many things I can get better at photography wise. Like I don't think I'll ever think that I've made it. Like I always think there's something I can improve on. And I think that's something just in any, whatever you want to do. That's something that you definitely have to think about, and always critique your work and try and just get better at it each and every day. So.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi cut out, but I don't know if they asked this, but what is your like favorite sport to cover out of all the sports?
I think I would say, that's a good question. It's either basketball or football. I think I would say I'll lean with football right now, because I was able to cover it last fall with the radio doing the football games, but also like I'll say football right now because getting cool photos with football is awesome. Like it's a sport that's pretty, like, it's easy to keep track of, at least during the game. I have to take notes, obviously. Like I'm a photographer and a reporter, which is not ideal, and I have my own opinions on all of that sort of stuff. But I like capturing those moments, and it's just an awesome sport to watch, and it's the American sport. But I do like basketball a lot. Like that's what I started out with when I began covering stuff in college. Like I said, I really drew interest in covering the women's team, especially. I loved covering the men's team, but the women, they were what I started to cover when I joined. Like that was my sort of beat, I guess you could say. And I developed a relationship with some of the players, Jasmine Dickey, who's now in the WNBA. Like we talked on the regular for interviews and such, and we kind of all knew who each other was. Their previous head coach, Natasha Adair, was amazing as well. She was always open to talking to us because she saw us. We were there covering the games. We weren't just covering the men's basketball team. We were out covering the women because we wanted to. And it also, when I took over as sports director, it helped as well. But the fact was that they were really good as well. Not saying we wouldn't have covered them if they weren't, but it was just kind of how it played out. So I'll say football, but basketball is a very close second, and just basketball, the sport itself, not men's basketball, not women's basketball, just like basketball in general is also just really fun to shoot, call, write about. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's good to hear. I know Jasmine. I've watched her play on the Delaware basketball team, so that was cool. And then what would you say is your hardest sport to cover?
The hardest sport, from what my experience, I think like field hockey. Like I don't know a lot about field hockey at all. Like I remember I covered it an NCAA tournament game when the women's field hockey team at UD last fall. They hosted the first round game against, I forget who they're playing. It was like Fairfield or somebody. And I remember the Delaware photographer like walked up to me and we were just chatting. He's like, yeah, like I've been doing this for 15 years and I still don't know what happens when they like blow the whistle. And I really don't either. It's a pretty quick game, which is never a bad thing. But I'd say field hockey or maybe volleyball, because I just don't volleyball. I don't understand the scoring or the point, like the statistics. Like I don't understand any of that stuff. So yeah, field hockey or volleyball is probably the hardest thing for me to write about. Like I can always adapt with taking photos. Like that's probably the easier of the two, and you can get some cool shots, especially with volleyball if you're like up top or down low. But I'd say volleyball or field hockey for sure.
Yeah, field hockey is definitely a hard sport to learn. There's a lot of rules and whistles being blown, so I can see that.
Yeah, yeah.
As we kind of get a little closer to wrapping up here, I know we kind of touched on this a little bit already. How you were saying like biggest thing is just kind of stepping up and like getting involved first and foremost. But if there is any other advice you would say to someone looking to get into this industry, journalism, photography, would there be anything else you'd kind of want to mention?
Yeah, I'd say obviously, like I said, get involved with the student aspect, the student radio, student media. That's big, because I guess the thing that I will then add to that is once you start there, the next biggest thing that you can do is get internships and get as many as you can. Like I remember people would come into my class and say, I regret not getting enough internships. And I will say that to you guys right now too, because I also regret not being able to get, enough or what I felt was like could have gotten more internships. Because I interned twice. I interned twice during my senior year. Once over the summer just with a radio station as like a content writer, which wasn't great, but like it was something and people look at it. Like I got through it. I didn't have any issues with the people who did my work. And, I have it on my resume now for the time being. And then I interned in the spring of my senior year as a features writer for Delaware Public Media, which is a public media station in Delaware, obviously, that does a lot of radio news. But yeah, I'd say definitely get internships. And the way you do that, I mean, just connect with professors, like get professors to know who you are, because if you do that, that will help a lot. And you'll have professors that might be like, we'd love to, I think you'd be great to intern here, or like, there's this job that's open now. Like, I'd love to recommend you for it. So I'd say definitely get internships and it's a two-way street. Get involved in student media and then try and get in the internships field, because really what I've learned too is media industries, like being in student media is good. Like that is a very good start. But if you can write or produce or do whatever for a more recognized and like viewed, audience, or a viewed a media outlet, that's always a huge plus as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And my last question here. Are there any, social media accounts or any, websites we should be following to stay up to date with everything Patrick Laporte?
Related to myself or
anything?
Oh, I'll plug my photography account. That's probably the big one. I have Twitter. I don't use Twitter a lot. I know I have a friend of mine who works at Delaware Online, and he's always on Twitter, and I just don't use Twitter. That's another thing, like market yourself on social media for sure. But my photography account, it's plaporte.photography. I just post occasionally. It's kind of more just become like a personal type thing. But if you want to follow what I do, like feel free. Quite honestly, I have my the website's my portfolios on there as well if you want to check that out as well. So yeah. But but yeah, I'd say that's the big thing for my own personal accounts. So
Perfect. Yeah, I think if everyone else is cool, that's a perfect way to end up on. I appreciate your time, Pat. I think I got a lot of great stuff out of today, so I appreciate it.
appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Good to see you guys.
Of course, we'll see you.
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
Good
Sounds
All right,
luck
I'll
on
see you guys.
Good luck on the
the
exam.
All right, good luck. Bye bye.